Now once you're happy with it, and you can kind of slide it down into place, and it feels tight, and it looks as if it's the lines are pretty good all down the side, you can glue it in. You don't need to clamp this one, it just needs some finger pressure and then let it sit there for a while. If you feel like it, you can put a few pieces of tape on it. Don't need a ton of glue. Just trying to hold it in there. Try and get it on the walls as well as in the bottom of the channel. Now because the glue's in here, you're going to find as we slide this back in here, it won't go down quite as far as it did last time, but that's okay. So it's tight. And it's in. Okay, once that glue is dried, once that glue is dried, you can just trim these back. And just do it roughly with a saw. Take the bulk of it off. And then use some method to take this down flush and the top's flush. Now, I'm using this cypress, which has got a wonky curled grain in it. So try and use a blade type tool like the block plane, just chips and gouges. But the wood itself is pretty soft, so I'm just going to use my sander to do the whole thing. Now we're ready to route the channel that's going to house the binding to go on this. Now I use my Dremel for this. Lots of people use a laminate trimmer because they find that a Dremel is not quite powerful enough. However, I find if you take a few passes, and I'm using that down spiral bit all along here, that this works fine. And what I've done is I've made a little jig that my Dremel sits in, such that I have a surface here that will rest on the surface of the guitar, and a section here which will press against the side of the guitar. And though those two things aligned, I can hold on to this with my hand and run around the surface of the guitar. Now, I just use the adjustment of the bit in the chuck of the Dremel to adjust the height of the cut. And the bass is on a sliding mechanism here, so I can control how deep I cut in. And I find that works very well. Almost every time I use this, I modify this jig a little bit. I find this handle area here is not quite big enough. My fingers get tired after a while. But you can certainly buy from any of the luthier supply companies, StewMac or LMI, tools to do this as well, if you like to buy tools. Anyway, so I have set the depth of this so it is just a touch less than the height of my binding piece I'm going to use in here. And the depth, I've gone in about a third, maybe a little more than that of the depth, and I'm going to have to cut to house that binding. And we'll do the first pass. Start on the back, because if you make a mistake getting this going, it will be less visible on the back. Should make a note that when you're doing this area right here, where the mortise is for the neck tenon to go into, be careful you don't just carry on through here and your tool dives into this channel and you cut a big gouge out at the back there. Just take it out and skip this area, and we'll just manually with a chisel trim that area out afterwards. Now once you've done the first pass on the back, flip it over and do the first pass on the top before you adjust any settings to go deeper on the Dremel. Now once the primary channel is in there for the binding, you can put the secondary channel in. Remember, I'm going to have a very thin piece of cedar that goes inside the binding on the top. And I've decided to put it on the bottom too, just for consistency. Now, reset your router so it's not as deep. You don't want to go, again, as with anything, you don't really want to go any more than halfway through the plate. So I've set this height from about half the distance through the soundboard in this case, and the correct amount in for the thickness of my little cedar strip. And I can do this all in one pass. The other thing you may find as you're doing this, especially on the primary channel, because typically the thickness of your binding, the 2 millimeters, is just about the same as the thickness of your sides. And you'll actually erode away the entire side material, and you'll get down into the kerf lining, or even more specifically, into the glue of the kerf lining. And you'll find that as your Dremel tool goes along there, with all the heat, you create this kind of a molten, gluey, sawdusty gunk that's left over behind, which you have to clean out. And not only do you have to clean it out of the channel, but you'll gum up your bit. So every once in a while you need to pause and take a look at your bit so see that it's not becoming caked in hardened glue, and clean that off because it won't cut as well when it's covered in glue. Now these areas that we skip by because of the mortise, just take an X-Acto knife and a ruler and trim those up using a chisel to get the details out. Now, the actual piece of binding will need to be bent, just like we did on the sides, so that it matches the shape of the sides. It doesn't have to be terribly accurate, because it will push into position a fair amount. But just leaving it straight is not a good idea, although it's theoretically possible to put it on straight. I wouldn't recommend it. Give it a rough bending to match the shape of your sides before you start this operation. It'll bend really easily. I just squirt it. I don't bother soaking it. I just give it a little squirt with my spray bottle beforehand.